The National Science Foundation, supporting research and education across all fields of science and engineering. The National Science Foundation, where discoveries begin.
This film is a tribute to all those early Greek explorers whose ideas still light our world. And as a Greek American, I am proud to celebrate their spirit and achievements. I hope you'll be amazed and inspired by their story and by all the wonders of ancient Greece.
Hi, I'm Nia Vardalis. In my Big Fat Greek Wedding, I told you about Greek culture and traditions. Now I want to share with you the history and archaeology of the culture I love so much. "2,500 years ago, our ancestors initiated the most radically innovative period in all of human history. They redefined art, literature, medicine, and philosophy, and created a new kind of society based on equality, a democracy. In many ways, we are all sons and daughters of ancient Greece.
I am Greek. So are you. The Greeks were the first to celebrate the independent mind the way you do. They shaped what you think is good and true and beautiful.
All through Greece, secrets of this glorious past lie buried, awaiting the light of day. This is the quest of the archaeologist. After 2,000 years, chance uncovered the statue of Poseidon, god of the sea. As sailors, many Greeks revered Poseidon above all other gods. In all of the Mediterranean, the Greeks were the first ever to make seagoing voyages. 10,000 years ago, they brought stone tools from the islands to the Greek mainland. They became skilled sailors because they had to be. They lived in a land of 2,000 islands. Strategically located between Europe, Asia, and Africa, Greece was destined for a pivotal role in the spread of ideas. Throughout Greece, magnificent stone ruins announce the legacy of a mighty civilization. But beneath the ground, there are whispers of a secret world. As an archaeologist, Christos Dumas has spent a lifetime listening for these voices of the past.
My father was a farmer, too poor to own his own land. Just like these children, I grew up living and breathing the history of my country. My most thrilling moment was not my greatest find. I was only 22. I discovered a scrap of broken pottery that somebody had inscribed 2,500 years ago. I knew right then I had to devote my life to this kind of detective work. The great adventure of my life began 15 years later. On the island of Santorini, near the ancient town of Thera, my professor found traces of a Bronze Age city. But the people there left no written language we can understand. So we know only what their objects tell us. Dr. Spiridon Marinatos had found evidence that would open the door to a lost world. And he asked me to join him.
Many Bronze Age sites have been trampled by time. But not here, where the gigantic volcanic eruption which destroyed the culture also preserved it.
On Santorini today, you can feel the pulse of life. So it's not too hard to imagine what this island was like 35 centuries ago, before life was suddenly snuffed out.
The shape of the island, surrounding a huge volcanic crater, has prompted some archaeologists to look here for the lost city of Atlantis, the fabled city Plato wrote about. Plato described Atlantis as an island city surrounded by a ring of land, much like Santorini. Could Santorini be Atlantis?
To me, Atlantis is no more than a fascinating myth. But what we were about to find was even more intriguing. When we dug down and brushed away the ash, we found thousands of everyday items. Tools and clay pots containing remnants of barley, fish and snails. This find could transform our knowledge of Bronze Age Greece. Now I knew why Professor Marinatos was so excited. Many of the walls were painted with murals, but there was one problem. The wall paintings were smashed to pieces. They survived only because the site was covered in a shield of pumice, which is rather like popcorn. Piecing the paintings together is like getting to know someone. But one day you realize this is now somebody you wonder about and care about, a new friend. Until now, no one had ever seen such an expressive face from Bronze Age Greece. People from the past speak to us, provided we are ready to listen. The paintings opened a wonderful window onto the lives of some gentle, artistic people. Who was this elegant woman? She picks crocus flowers, which yield the coveted spice, saffron. We carefully catalogue the seeds found here. Seeds which tell us what the ancient people ate and even how far they traveled to get it.
Τώρα τα βράδια μου, βράδια βουνά, του ταξιδιού μαυρά πανιά, άδεια η καρδιά μου, γειτονιά, στου κόσμου αυτού την ερημιά.
The sea was central to this island culture, yet their boats were a mystery. The only clues came from small ringed seals, which offered no details.
In fact, we knew almost nothing about Bronze Age ships until the flotilla painting was assembled. We were amazed to see such large ships. For the first time, we could see details of their sails and rigging. This painting broadened our knowledge tenfold.
Φωνή της μοίρας, φωνή της λύρας, τραγούδισέ μου το παράπονο που ζω. Τραγούδισέ μου, αλήθεια πες μου, πότε τα μάτια της θα δω.
We found no palace on Santorini, only comfortable houses. The people had leisure time to pursue the arts and sports, like boxing. Now that we had come to know the people through the paintings, we were really curious. What was their fate when the volcano erupted? When we removed the volcanic material, we found nobody, no victims, and it is a surprise. What happened? Because nobody could have survived such a disaster. Poisonous gases accompanied the eruption, and people would have died instantly, just as they did at Pompeii. Where were the people? To unravel this mystery, we had to understand the volcanic eruption that buried their homes. For that, I turned to my friend with a long name, the volcanologist Dr. Yorgos Vouliokalakis. I call him George.
George to the rescue.
Γιώργο! Ευχαριστώ, παιδιά μου.
Να είχα φτερά στα πόδια, τα τόσα σου ανηφόρια, τα τόσα σου εμπόδια, να πέρναγα με μιας επιστροφή. Ναι, ναι, να φεύγα σαν λυγή, να μου φωτιά που απλώνει, ήλιος που ξημερώνει και να σε εσύ το χιόνι.
To find the people who may have been buried by the ancient volcano, George and my assistant, ΕΡΕΥΝΗ, used ground-penetrating radar to peer down into the soil as far as 60 feet. Someday, such tools may reveal people who huddled together when the eruption occurred. In our search, George and I used the Socratic method by asking questions of each other. Yes, but this is due to what? To the composition or to the machine or to the capacity of the machine or what?
Okay, I think that it's because there is no settlement here.
Was there enough time to escape the island in boats? George said that perhaps the timeline of the eruption could help us.
This cliff, all 100 feet of it, was laid down during the eruption. To George, the cliff is a timetable, a diagram showing how the eruption unfolded. By studying the layers of debris, George can trace the 4 phases of the Great Eruption. Because the bottom layer was just 3 inches thick, George knew that the first phase lasted only about 10 minutes.
Fine yellow wash layer, which fell for about 10 minutes before the big blast began.
It's like mud.
Yes, this is muddy layer. And people could survive this event. But the big problem began after it.
The volcano gave off plenty of warning signals. But once the second phase began, it turned deadly in just minutes.
The third phase began when the volcano's cone caved in. Seawater rushed into this inferno, creating a pressure cooker of superheated steam, which set off a massive explosion with the force of 40 atomic bombs. Phase 4. Raging avalanches of rock and debris, known as pyroclastic flows.
Evidence suggests that the volcano produced gigantic waves, 60 feet high. If people escaped by ship at the last minute, they never could have survived these tsunamis. The thickness of ash has proved that this was probably the largest volcanic explosion ever witnessed.
I wonder about the people. What happened to the woman who was picking saffron?
Dr. Dumas wondered exactly when they lived. George thought he could help. George makes frequent trips to study the volcano's vents. This is George's laboratory.
Σου φωτιές στο χρόνο κι είναι τα χέρια σου μια φυλακή. Το ξέρω πάλι θα μ' αφήσεις μόνο κάποια Κυριακή.
Every volcano emits a different blend of minerals. To pinpoint the exact date of the eruption, George and other geologists identified the distinct mineral fingerprint of the Santorini volcano. When the volcano blew, it was heard thousands of miles away. This volcano had a global impact on weather patterns.
Far away in Greenland, when the volcanic ash settled on the ice cap, it left a fingerprint.
Who would expect that an ancient Greek secret lay buried in a glacier? Scientists have drilled down 2 miles into the ice cap to recover ice cores that go back 250,000 years. Each stripe represents a summer and winter. The unmistakable fingerprint of the Santorini eruption tells scientists exactly what year the volcano blew. 1646 BC. A century earlier than the historians had previously thought. The startling date of the eruption changed the timeline of Greek history. The date of the paintings proved that the islanders had wider contact with other cultures sooner than expected.
Because we have the depiction of Mycenaean warriors with their boar-tusked helmets.
Boar-tusk helmets were worn only by Mycenaeans, Greek mainlanders considered enemies of the island cultures. Yet here they all are, side by side, on the same ship. Something that archaeologists are still coming to grips with.
Ships were vital to this island culture. One day, an even greater Greek civilization would thrive on sea power.
A 1,000 years after the volcano buried Santorini, the Greeks sailed well beyond the Aegean Sea, encountering exotic new ideas which inspired them to reshape their view of the world. Philosophers and merchants traveled here to exchange both goods and ideas, making Athens the hub of the first information age. Here in Athens, unlike Santorini, historians and poets wrote down every detail of all the great events. Instead of digging through dirt, scholars dig through written texts to find the secrets of the past.
The earliest written languages were complicated. Only priests and scribes could master Egyptian with its 1,000 hieroglyphs. By radically simplifying the alphabet, the Greeks opened up written language to the ordinary citizen. What a powerful tool for the spread of democratic ideas.
Although free thinkers risked censorship and even death, the central marketplace in Athens was the site of heated debates. The most radical topic of debate was democracy. In 510 BC, the citizens of Athens voted for the first time, signaling their choice with white or black stones. But this experiment in democracy had limits. Voting was open only to citizens, male citizens. Women and slaves could not vote.
For nearly a century, Greece blazed like the sun at the intellectual center of the ancient world, embracing foreign ideas and improving on them. Egyptian sculptors influenced the Greeks. The stylized figures from Egypt are reflected in early Greek statues that stand rigid, 1 foot forward. But once the Greeks mastered the skill, they took it to another level and made it their own. The sculptors could almost breathe life into marble and bronze to capture the truth about how we move.
The stage play. Greek poets and playwrights invented the basic forms of comedy and tragedy. Now there's an innovation.
Hundreds of theaters were built all over the Greek world. The ancient Greeks grasped the true purpose of theater. It was not simply entertainment. Theater was a central forum for debating ideas.
Ώστε εδώ είστε λοιπόν. Ελάτε να σας ανακοινώσω κάτι. Λοιπόν, τα αποφάσισα. Θα κάνουμε αποχή από το σεξ να σταματήσει ο πόλεμος.
This is the great play Lysistrata, one of the first anti-war comedies.
Ούτε κι εγώ και στο είναι σούνι ο πόλεμος.
Hey, I think that's my cousin.
Ούτε εσύ που μου έλεγες θα έχουμε στο κορμί σου τα δύο. Εσύ.
Αποκλείεται. Ούτε εγώ.
Όχι.
Όχι.
This culture celebrated both the poet and the warrior. The Greek navies relied on sleek ships called triremes. tiers of oars stacked in 3 lines, one on top of each other. The oarsmen had to function in perfect unison. In this way, they could reach a speed of 15 miles an hour.
What's that?
This is the ram. And as the ram was deep in the water, with that speed it could smash a hole in the enemy ship and sink it. What do you think about that? To expand their empire, the Persians attacked Greece. The Athenian navy laid in wait at dawn at the Straits of Salamis. In this narrow passage, the faster Greek ships had an advantage. Though outnumbered 2-1, the more maneuverable Greek ships were able to ram the Persian ships and win a decisive victory. At Salamis, Greek seafaring skills preserved democracy.
The political leader of Athens, Pericles, envisioned a great temple on the Acropolis, the tall hill in central Athens. Hundreds of stonemasons labored for 15 years.
This temple was to honor Athena, goddess of wisdom. It was called the Parthenon.
Of all the gods and goddesses, Athena was the most revered by the Athenians. She gave her name to the city, and it was thought, her protection. Today, the words of Pericles seem prophetic, but not in the way he intended.
You should fix your eyes every day on the greatness of Athens, as she really is, and should fall in love with her. When you realize her greatness, then reflect that what made her great was men with a spirit of adventure, men who knew their duty, men who were ashamed to fall below a certain standard.
The Parthenon once brimmed with life. But today, broken columns lie scattered about. New software helps archaeologists piece together the puzzle without physically moving around blocks of marble that weigh 10,000 pounds each.
This building was a revolutionary design. There isn't a single straight line. Pillars swell and taper, floors curve. The Greeks had the genius to tailor this building to the human eye, and the skill to build it.
crown jewel of the Parthenon was once a huge statue of the goddess Athena, 40 feet tall. This tower of ivory and gold cost even more than the building which housed it.
When the computer carried us back through time, I felt such a deep connection to my Greek ancestors. That wasn't my first leap back in time. That little piece of pottery I unearthed 50 years ago was a ballot used to vote against Pericles, the visionary builder of the Parthenon. I've never forgotten that moment. The name Pericles, scratched into a scrap of pottery, spelled trouble. Athens had overspent her treasury. The Parthenon, once a symbol of glory, now stood for arrogance and extravagance.
Athens overextended her armies in too many wars, too far afield. The long wars with Sparta left Athens too poor and too weak to keep her grasp on power.
After nearly a century of innovation and supremacy, Athens' hubris, her arrogance, was her downfall.
Here, on the abandoned island of Delos, you can almost hear the echoes of high-flying Athens crashing to earth.
Even today, the fall of Athens sounds a note of caution.
Delos was the treasury for Athens, a center of wealth, alive with laughter and music, and if you listen, you can hear it on the wind.
Civilizations can simply crumble. Volcanoes can bury them. They can collapse under the weight of their own pride and ambition. When civilizations fall from a great height, they shatter. But centuries later, those glorious fragments still enrich our lives.
Over 3,000 years ago, Greeks took to the sea in ships, seeking wealth and power. But the most vital cargo they brought back was knowledge and new ideas. On the island of Santorini, Dr. Dumas continues his detective work.
The ancient Greeks were so very passionate in their quest for truth, and it is this passion that inspires me. It is because I am Greek. People from the past speak to us, provided that we are ready to listen. Εδώ θέλω να μου εξηγήσεις ακριβώς αυτό εδώ, που λέμε ήταν η πρώτη καλδέρα.
Dr. Dumas's team reassembles a lost world. The volcano that destroyed a Bronze Age culture also preserved its secrets. In many ways, the advanced civilization on Santorini foreshadowed the golden age of Greece. The passionate creativity of the golden age illuminated every facet of life, from philosophy and art to the Olympic spirit that still burns bright. No other civilization has so profoundly shaped who we are and how we live. My Greek ancestors taught us to govern ourselves with moderation, heal ourselves through the use of logic, and express ourselves, our inner soul, through art. The world has never seen anything quite like the transformation of ancient Greece, where an enlightened society based on equality redefined what it means to be human. So mighty was that one great burst of light that its afterglow still lights the world.
Τραγούδισέ μου, αλήθεια πες μου,